and Joachim.
You probably know them.
Yeah, you might recognize them as Mary's parents.
Exactly.
But we're not just tracing family trees here.
No.
We're going to go deep into how the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church sees them, how their story is woven into their beliefs, their art, their whole way of life.
It's a perspective that might surprise you.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
We tend to think of them as just kind of background characters.
Yeah.
But in Ethiopian Orthodoxy, they take on this whole other level of importance.
Oh, totally. And that's what I love about these deep dives. We get to kind of like uncover those hidden layers, you know?
Absolutely.
So to kind of set the stage for everyone,
Okay.
can you tell us a bit about how the Ethiopian Orthodox Church sees lineage and why that's so important to their belief system?
Sure. So their beliefs are really deeply rooted in both the Old and New Testaments. They see a direct line connecting the two. And lineage, this idea of who came from whom, becomes incredibly important.
Okay, so it's not just about individual figures,
No.
but how they fit into this bigger interconnected story.
Exactly. They believe that God's plan unfolds through generations.
Okay.
And Anne and Joachim become key players in that plan.
All right, so it's not just like any random family.
Right.
It's divinely chosen.
Yeah.
This lineage is meant to do something.
Yeah, they're the bridge between the Old Testament patriarchs
Oh, wow.
and the coming of Jesus.
Wow. Okay, so much more than just parents or grandparents, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Can we back up a little bit, though?
Sure.
For those of us who maybe need a little refresher,
Yeah.
who exactly were Anne and Joachim?
Okay.
What are the key parts of their story that we need to know to kind of understand what we're going to talk about today?
So they were a devout couple,
Okay.
known for their righteousness,
Yeah.
but they faced a significant challenge. They were
Really?
childless
Okay.
for many years.
And I'm assuming back then that wasn't just like a personal sadness.
No, not at all.
It was a big social deal, right?
Huge social stigma.
Yeah.
It was seen as a sign of God's disfavor,
Oof. Yeah.
which makes their story even more remarkable.
All right, so we've got this backdrop of devoutness,
Yes.
but also this challenge of childlessness.
Right.
What happens next?
Well, the turning point comes with a divine announcement.
Okay.
An angel appears to Joachim,
Oh, wow.
telling him that his wife Anne will conceive a child,
Okay.
a daughter who will be named Mary.
Okay, so hold on. It's not just a birth announcement.
No,
This is a divine intervention.
exactly.
This child is meant for something big.
Precisely. And to add another layer,
Okay.
tradition tells us that Joachim was a descendant of King David.
Whoa, hold on, wait a minute.
Yeah,
So Mary has royal blood on both sides of her family.
she does.
That's huge.
It is. It reinforces the idea of Jesus as a descendant of kings,
Okay.
fulfilling the prophecies about a Messiah who would come from the line of David.
So Anne and Joachim aren't just Mary's parents. They're fulfilling this ancient lineage that leads directly to Jesus.
Exactly.
That's a pretty heavy responsibility.
It is.
Yeah.
And their story highlights how God works through human families, through generations, to fulfill his purpose.
Okay, so it's about this kind of like weaving together of the human and the divine
Absolutely.
to achieve this ultimate goal.
Right.
Okay.
But it's not just about Joachim's lineage.
Okay.
Anne's role is equally crucial.
All right.
And in Ethiopian Orthodoxy, she's given a special place of honor.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about how they view Anne.
Okay.
Is it just as Mary's mother, or is there more to it?
Oh, there's so much more.
Okay.
She's highly venerated in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church,
Okay.
not just as a mother, but as a powerful figure in her own right.
So how does that veneration play out?
Okay.
What are some specific examples?
Well, there are prayers dedicated to her, hymns that praise her virtues, and many churches and monasteries bear her name. Pilgrimages are made to sites associated with her.
So she is a big deal.
She's seen as a model of faith,
Uh-huh.
of motherhood,
Okay.
and most importantly, as a powerful intercessor.
Intercessor. Okay.
Yes.
That's a term I've heard before.
Right.
But can you unpack it a little bit?
Sure.
What does that mean for Anne's role?
So in Ethiopian Orthodox belief, saints aren't just figures from the past.
Okay.
They're considered to be alive in the spiritual realm, closer to God.
Okay.
And because of that closeness, They can intercede on behalf of the living.
Okay.
Praying for us, advocating for us.
So when people pray to St. Anne,
Yes.
they believe she's actually hearing those prayers and can influence things in their lives.
Exactly.
Right.
And because of her own experiences, especially the challenge of infertility, she's seen as a particular advocate for women, for mothers, for anyone struggling with those issues.
It's almost like having a direct line to someone with influence in the heavenly court, you know, someone who understands those very specific challenges.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and this idea of Anne as a powerful interceding figure is reflected in how she's depicted in their art, their iconography.
Absolutely.
Now, that's something I've always found fascinating about icons.
Yeah.
It's not just a portrait.
It's a visual language?
It's like a visual language, right?
Yes.
So how do Ethiopian icons portray St. Anne?
Okay.
What are some of the key details?
Often you'll see her alongside Mary,
Okay.
emphasizing that mother-daughter bond. But she's also depicted holding specific objects
Okay.
that symbolize her virtues and spiritual status.
So it's not just about the image itself, it's about those symbolic details that add another layer of meaning.
Exactly.
What kind of objects are we talking about?
You might see her holding a scroll,
Okay.
which represents wisdom and the divine word,
Okay.
or a lily, symbolizing purity and her role in bringing forth the pure vessel for Christ.
Okay.
And sometimes she's depicted holding a veil.
A veil. I wouldn't have thought of that as a particularly religious symbol.
Right.
What's the significance there?
In Ethiopian tradition, the veil represents Anne's protective power.
Okay.
It's a visual reminder of her role as an intercessor, someone who can shield and protect those who pray to her.
So it's not just a pretty picture. It's a visual sermon,
Exactly.
conveying a whole set of beliefs about Anne's power and her role in the lives of believers.
Right, and these visual cues help to solidify those beliefs,
Yeah.
making them accessible and memorable.
Okay.
It's a way of passing down these teachings through generations, even for those who may not be able to read or write.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's really accessible to everyone.
It is.
This is all fascinating. I'm starting to see how these stories, the iconography, the beliefs,
Yeah,
all work together to paint this rich and complex picture of St. Anne.
absolutely.
But what about Joachim?
Yeah.
Does he get overshadowed by her prominence?
He often gets less attention,
Okay.
which is interesting in itself.
Yeah.
But in understanding the Ethiopian Orthodox view of family and fatherhood,
Okay.
his role is still crucial.
So it's not just a woman-centric focus.
Right.
It's about the importance of both parents.
Absolutely. Joachim's story is used to teach about righteousness, obedience, and faithfulness.
Okay.
He's a model for men especially.
Okay.
But it also reinforces this idea that both parents are essential in raising faithful children.
Yeah, that's a message that definitely resonates today.
Yeah.
It takes a village, or at least two very dedicated parents,
Right.
to raise a child in faith.
Exactly. And the iconography reinforces this too.
Okay.
You often see Joachim depicted alongside Anne,
Okay.
reinforcing that they're in this together,
Okay.
partners in faith and in parenting.
All right, so we've got these two figures who are much more than just names in a family tree.
Right.
They represent these deep theological concepts about lineage, about intercession,
Yes.
about the roles of both parents in raising a family that's grounded in faith.
Exactly. But we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, really?
There's so much more to explore about their story and its impact on Ethiopian Orthodox belief.
Well, luckily we have a whole deep dive ahead of us.
We
We
do.
do. This is already blowing my mind. I can't wait to see what other insights we uncover.
Me too.
Okay, I'm ready to dive back in. Last time we were talking about how the Ethiopian Orthodox Church views Saints Anne and Joachim.
Yes.
It's not just as grandparents of Jesus,
Right.
but as these figures who embody deeper concepts about faith, family, and God's plan unfolding through generations.
It's a fascinating perspective, isn't it?
It really is. And one of the things that struck me was this idea of divine parenthood that we touched on briefly.
Yeah.
Can we unpack that a little more?
Absolutely.
What does that actually mean
Yeah.
in the context of Anne and Joachim's story?
It's a concept that goes beyond simply being Mary's biological parents. It's about seeing their entire lives, their very beings, as inherently holy
Okay.
because they were chosen for this specific role in God's plan.
So it's like saying their existence wasn't random.
It could
They were
be
prepared, almost destined to bring Mary into the world.
Exactly. And this idea has a profound impact on how Ethiopian Orthodox Christians view parenthood in general.
Okay.
It elevates family to this sacred institution,
Wow.
a reflection of the divine order.
It's not just about blood ties. It's about seeing family as part of God's grand design.
Precisely. And that brings us back to Joachim,
Okay.
who often gets less attention than Anne.
Yeah.
But in understanding this concept of divine parenthood, his role becomes crucial.
Okay. I'm curious. We talked about Anne being this powerful intercessor, a protector.
Right.
But what about Joachim?
Yeah.
What unique aspects of fatherhood does he represent in Ethiopian Orthodox belief?
Well, his story is often used to teach about righteousness, obedience, and faithfulness. Remember, he was initially rejected by the priests when he went to offer a sacrifice because he was childless.
Right.
It was seen as a sign of God's displeasure.
So he was publicly shamed, essentially.
Yes.
Essentially.
How did he respond to that?
He didn't get angry or resentful.
Okay.
Instead, he retreated to the wilderness to fast and pray,
Wow.
humbling himself before God.
So it's a story about humility,
Yes.
about accepting God's will even when it's difficult, it doesn't make sense to us.
Exactly. And that humility is seen as a key virtue for men, especially fathers.
Okay.
It's about putting aside your ego, surrendering to a higher purpose.
That's a powerful message, and one that's often overlooked in our culture,
I agree.
where masculinity is often associated with dominance and control.
Right.
Here we have this model of humble, faithful fatherhood.
Yes, and that model is further emphasized through the concept of divine parenthood.
Well-
It's not just about being a biological father.
Uh-huh.
It's about actively participating in God's work by raising children in faith. So it's a spiritual calling almost,
It is.
a responsibility to guide your family towards righteousness.
Yes, and Joachim's story emphasizes that this responsibility isn't just about providing material things.
Okay.
It's about modeling faith, humility, and obedience. It's about creating a home where those values are lived out every day.
It's fascinating how they weave these theological concepts into everyday life,
Yeah.
making them relatable and relevant to families.
Right.
But I'm also wondering, doesn't this idea of divine parenthood put a lot of pressure on families? What about those who struggle with infertility?
Yeah.
Or those whose families don't fit this ideal model?
That's a valid question, and it's something that's often debated.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that Ethiopian Orthodox teachings also emphasize grace and compassion. It's not about being perfect, it's about striving for righteousness.
So it's more about intention than perfection.
Exactly.
Doing your best to create a loving, faith-filled home.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't always look like the picture-perfect ideal.
Exactly. And that's where the stories of Anne and Joachim become so powerful.
Okay.
They weren't perfect. They faced their own struggles.
Right.
But their unwavering faith is what sets them apart.
It's like they're saying, look, we're not asking you to be superhuman, just faithful.
Right.
Trust in God's plan even when things are tough.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And that message of hope is what makes their story so enduring, so relevant, even centuries later.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
Like this intricate tapestry of beliefs and stories.
Absolutely.
But before we lose the thread completely, I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The temple.
Ah, yes. The temple plays a crucial role in their story and in Ethiopian Orthodox belief as a whole.
I'm curious about this. We talked about Anne and Joachim's lineage connecting to King David and ultimately to Jesus.
Right.
But how does the temple fit into that narrative?
Well, according to tradition, when Mary was 3 years old,
Okay.
Anne and Joachim dedicated her to the temple.
Wait, so she actually lived in the temple?
Yes, it's a detail that's often overlooked.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly significant in understanding Ethiopian Orthodox beliefs about Mary's purity and her preparation for her unique role.
It's almost like the temple becomes the symbol of spiritual preparation.
Yes.
A place set apart for her to grow in holiness.
Exactly. And there are all these fascinating stories about Mary's time in the temple. Legends about angels bringing her food.
Wow.
About her being surrounded by this aura of holiness even as a child.
It adds another layer to her story, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not just about her being chosen.
Right.
It's about her being actively prepared for her role from a very young age.
And it reinforces the idea that God's plan is intentional, meticulous.
Yeah.
It's not just random chance.
Yeah.
It's about careful preparation, about setting the stage for something extraordinary.
This is all so mind-blowing. I feel like we've gone from a simple family tree to this incredibly complex web of theological ideas and historical significance.
And we're not done yet. There's still so much more to uncover about Anne and Joachim and how their story continues to resonate in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition.
Well, luckily for us, we have a little more time to dig deeper.
We do.
This deep dive is truly living up to its name. That last segment was a lot to take in.
I know, it's a lot.
We were talking about Mary being dedicated to the temple at age 3.
Right.
It's such a powerful image, you know?
It is.
Setting the stage for something truly extraordinary.
It really is, and it speaks to the importance of the temple.
Okay.
In Ethiopian Orthodox belief.
Yeah.
It's not just a building.
Right.
It represents the dwelling place of God. A point of connection between heaven and earth.
So by placing Mary in that context, they're emphasizing her purity.
Right.
Her closeness to God.
Yes.
Almost like she's being set apart for her role as the mother of Jesus.
Exactly. And this act of dedication also reinforces that idea of divine parenthood.
Right.
That we were talking about. It's not just about biological ties.
Right.
It's about actively participating in God's plan, even if that means letting go of your child to fulfill a higher purpose.
That must have been so difficult for Anne and Joachim.
Well, I'm sure it was.
To essentially surrender their daughter to the temple.
It's a testament to their faith.
Yeah.
Their willingness to trust in God's plan, even when it demanded such a tremendous sacrifice.
And that act of surrender becomes a powerful model for believers too.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that sometimes following God means letting go of our own desires, our own plans, and trusting that He has something greater in store.
It really resonates, doesn't it?
It does. It resonates deeply even today.
Yeah.
We often try to cling to control.
We do.
To dictate the course of our lives.
Right.
But Anne and Joachim's story reminds us that true faith involves surrender.
Yes.
A willingness to let go and allow God to work through us.
Absolutely. And their story also offers such a profound message of hope, especially for those struggling with infertility.
Yeah.
Remember, they faced years of childlessness before Mary's miraculous birth.
Yeah.
Their perseverance, their unwavering belief that God would fulfill His promise.
Yeah.
It's a source of inspiration for countless people.
It's like they're saying, don't give up hope. Keep the faith even when it's hard.
Right.
Even when it feels like all doors are closed. God's timing is not our timing.
That's beautifully put.
Thanks.
And it brings us back to that central theme of lineage that runs through their entire story. Anne and Joachim's faithfulness.
Yeah.
Their willingness to surrender to God's plan.
Right.
It paved the way for Mary's birth.
Okay.
Which in turn led to the coming of Jesus.
So their story isn't just about them.
No.
It's about this incredible chain of events.
Yes.
That ultimately leads to the salvation of humanity.
It really puts things into perspective.
It does. It's about understanding that each life, each generation plays a part in God's grand narrative.
Precisely. And by exploring their story through the lens of Ethiopian Orthodox belief, we gain a deeper appreciation for their significance.
Okay.
They're not just figures in a family tree.
Right.
They're models of faith, of parenthood, of surrender, and ultimately of hope.
This has been such an enlightening deep dive.
I agree. It has been fascinating.
I feel like we've gone from a basic understanding of who Anne and Joachim were to uncovering this rich tapestry of theological concepts and spiritual lessons.
And that's the beauty of exploring different faith traditions.
It really is.
It opens our minds to new perspectives, challenges our assumptions, and ultimately deepens our understanding of the human experience.
I couldn't agree more. It's been a true privilege to delve into this fascinating world with you as our guide.
Well, thank you. The pleasure was all mine.
I always learn so much from these conversations.
Me too.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey.
Yes, thank you for listening.
We hope you've been as inspired and intrigued as we have.
Absolutely.
Remember, there's always more to discover.
Always something new to learn.
Always deeper layers to uncover.
That's right.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper.